Hello everybody, welcome to IT Skills channel. My name is Aiden. In today's video, we're going to talk about Apple. Apple had their WWDC conference in 2025. It started June 9th and then June 13th. And unfortunately, it was far from impressive because Apple does not like innovating. Apple does not do any good job innovating. And we've seen this with their iPhone lineup for a long time now. And that's why if you want a true innovation, you have to stay with Android. Now, before you click off this video, say, you know what, I'm a true Apple supporter, we have to watch it to the end and then we'll see about it. But before we do that, I want to tell you that I actually use Apple. So it's not all about hating. I actually tried the new macOS Tahoe, and you can see I'm running on here because we need to try to make sense of what I mean by this. And ultimately speaking, Apple had that conference, and I'm going to show you in my other screen. They had this conference over here. This conference was supposed to bring all the latest gear. They did introduce a new iOS. They introduced a lot of design, a lot of glass. It's not really going to give everybody a run for their money because every company is talking about embracing AI, doing something cool and new. Apple did not do anything. They just decided to basically repackage what they always done, the same cycle iPhone, macOS looks. They just like to call it a different thing. They take a feature away, they bring it back. Apple is weird. It's weird because they should be innovating more, but they just like to move differently. And in this conference, there's a lot of highlights they introduced, but none of it is gonna give you like, you know what, this is actually good. This is actually innovative. None of it is gonna make you feel like it's gonna move you away from your seat. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this video. How and why Apple does keep failing apart. Why do they seem to fail of doing any innovation of any sort? Why do they do this? So let's react on this and figure out why. And then we'll see about it. But before we do that, I want to tell you that I actually use Apple. So it's not all about hating. I actually tried the new macOS Tahoe. And you can see I'm running on here, and I'm not really all the way. I just wanted to see, and I want the competition to be swift. And right now we don't see that. That's why we need to change it. So anyways, you can look out of here. If I go to About Mac, you can see I'm running the Tahoe. This has a lot of bugs, so do not install this on your main device. So let's react to this video though.
Our new OS releases will be available as developer betas today.
There was a time when Apple keynotes felt like a concert. Thousands tuned in, Steve Jobs would stroll onto the stage, he would unveil something we did not even know that we were missing. And suddenly the world couldn't live without it. The iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, whole industry shifted overnight and Apple stocks would soar. But fast forward to 2025 and the vibe couldn't have been more different. Yesterday was Apple's annual WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference. So Apple unveiled the Liquid Glass, its biggest redesign since 2013.
Imagine when you are a big company, your biggest innovation of all this year is actually when everybody's talking about AI is just a liquid glass. It's like bringing what you call like a spoon to a not impressive, powerless, and actually looks more like silly. But that's what Apple is. Let's continue.
We began by rethinking the fundamental elements that make up our software. And it starts with an entirely new expressive material we call liquid glass. With the optical qualities of glass and a fluidity that only Apple can achieve, it transforms depending on your content or even your context and brings more clarity to navigation and controls.
The new user interface looks like the future. The software is sleek, it dynamically reacts to motion and light, it lets users see through everything.
I don't think it's the
Basically,
future.
It's transparent. And in the age of generative intelligence, it feels like a cheap party trick, and not just to us, the consumers. Even the investors were disappointed. Just 6 minutes into the show, Apple stocks dropped by 2.5%. So what happened here? Has Apple lost the plot? 1 year ago, they announced a grand AI vision. They called it Apple Intelligence, and Wall Street lost its mind. There was a $200 billion spike in Apple's value. Headlines declared the iPhone was finally about to become smart. Siri was about to get a brain. 12 months later, Siri's upgrade is MIA, missing in action.
The way she puts it is the way to put it, actually. Siri is not getting a brain. Siri is not becoming LLM. Siri is becoming like lost in translation, basically. Oh my God. But it's funny.
The awaited upgrade has been postponed once again. Apple says it needs more time. Meanwhile, its competitors are sprinting ahead. Google's Gemini is writing essays and planning meals. Meta's AI is all over WhatsApp. Microsoft is stuffing AI into your Word docs. OpenAI is hoping to build devices. And Apple? Apple is showing us buttons that fade in sunlight. Now, to be fair, Apple has always been cautious. They don't like to ship half-baked ideas. They do not chase every shiny object, and in many ways that has worked for them. It's why people trust their products. But this is not about trust anymore. This is about pace. And Apple is way behind right now. What's worse, they seem to have accepted it. They're not even pretending to lead.
That is the worst one. They admit defeat. And before it was like in denial. Now, yeah, we know it's invent the glass. They almost come up with this presentation like a last minute. It's like it doesn't look like we would take it to the Worldwide Developer Conference and say, we invented a shiny glass, introducing a shiny glass. It's transparent. It's really great. What is that about? Come on, Apple. Let's stop the jokes.
And you could feel it during this event, this WWDC. Critics say a lot of this has to do with the man leading the company right now, and that is Tim Cook. In 2011, he took over Apple from Steve Jobs, and since then he has turned Apple into the world's first $3 trillion company. By every capitalist metric, he is a success. And yet, Tim Cook's Apple feels different. The radical reinvention is gone. In its place, there's an obsession with refinement. Apple's most recent innovations have been safe. A slightly thinner MacBook, a slightly brighter screen, a slightly less annoying Siri. Even Apple's own boardroom seems to know it. Reports suggest executives have internally acknowledged this. They say AI could make the iPhone irrelevant within a decade.
Wow.
So Apple is now in a race not to lead, but to survive. And the threats are not limited to technology. Legally, Apple is being boxed in. The company could lose $20 billion, a $20 billion annual deal with Google. Its App Store revenue faces antitrust heat, both in the US and the EU.
Yeah, that's a big case. And that started with Fortnite, and now a lot of companies may be opening to having their own market introduced. But that's a bigger story, another story, we can talk about it. But right now, it's just interesting that Apple
Then there's
is facing
China.
this.
Most of Apple's manufacturing happens in China, but Donald Trump's trade war has exposed this vulnerability. Apple will now have to move or face tariffs. So is this the beginning of the end for Apple? We say not so soon. The company still prints money. It still sells millions of iPhones. It still has time, but the threats to its dominance are multiplying. To course correct, Apple will have to do what it hasn't done in years. It will have to take risks, tear down its walled garden, rethink the privacy pitch, embrace third-party AI models, license Gemini or partner with OpenAI, let Siri talk to other brains, and allow customers to leave the Apple ecosystem with.
To be fair, they already introduced something with ChatGPT. If in Apple Intelligence, if you enable that, it does let you interact with ChatGPT. So they are actually, in a way, bringing other people in. It's just that Apple don't trust anybody except themselves. And that's why they're going to be behind. But I don't think they're going to be out of business. There's people that are so loyal to Apple. They cannot imagine their life without Apple. They're religiously devoted. So Apple will be still good. They just may not be the dominant people they wanted to be in 10 years' time when AI is basically dominating. In fact, what makes this even hard is the fact that they released an article recently telling people how AI is not able to actually be the future. It doesn't have a sentient, mindset, and if it does consume more power when things get difficult. So they are basically saying AI sucks, but then everybody's going to it. So who's right?
Without wanting to. The other alternative is to slowly fade into irrelevance. Because here's the truth. Apple did not win by being polished. It won by being bold. The original iPod was clunky. The first iPhone lacked apps. The Mac was overpriced, but Steve Jobs bet on the future, and he was right. Today, Apple is betting on refinements. But the age of refinement is over. We are in the age of reinvention. If Apple cannot reinvent itself, someone else will do it for them.
Yeah. So Apple, they need to do something real quick, and they need to embrace AI because that's what everybody expects. So what do you guys think? Do you think Apple is wrong for not following AI? But that's good news for their employees. At least they don't have to worry about losing their job to AI, right? But what is this means for people who are seeing AI doing all these crazy things. Do they stick with their old clunky non-smartphone? Because phone, what means to be a smartphone right now is completely changed with AI. Having Gemini on my device, it makes things like that device even more than what it was. No longer just a device, it becomes like a companionship. And that's what Apple needs to make the iPhone. So yeah, that's all I have. Until next time, for today, peace.